Sleamaker, thank you for being here, and we're interested in hearing stories of Vassalboro.
Well, my story might begin when we moved here. Pat and I had married, and 3 days after we were wed, we came to Vassalboro with 5 of our 7 children. They were school age, the 5 were school, and the 2 oldest daughters were in college. But we bought the farm of Eli Doja on the Oak Grove Road in 1969 and brought our family in, and it has benefited us over these years. Pat taught school in Waterville. She started as a kindergarten teacher and worked her way up to the 2nd or 3rd grade part-time, but most of her time teaching was at kindergarten. We had 5 children that graduated from Waterville High. They traveled to school into Waterville because Pat was going in every day, so the kids would go with her. We didn't have a high school here in Vassalboro, so our children all went to Waterville schools. The only participation that I had in any civic affairs was I got on a school board. Jerry Bouchard, who was then just retiring as priest of St. Bridget, and I were good friends, and Jerry encouraged me to run for school committee, which I did. And I was elected chairman after I'd served for a couple of years, and during that period the movement began to consolidate 3 schools into one. We really needed a change, and the committee worked with us. It took us several years before we made a decision, but when we did the plan to where we would move into a consolidated situation, we had to buy property. And Jerry Bouchard and I went to see Fred Rancourt and his wife, because they owned a piece of property that would serve our purpose very nicely, and that's the property that the school sits on today. Then we had to come to the town with a referendum, and that was very divisive, and those in favor of schools consolidation ruled with 9 votes ahead of the others.
Wow.
And there was a group that wanted to contest the vote, and I was serving as chairman, and I said, no, a vote is a vote. And we took it to court. We paid the out-of-school funds, we paid the costs, and put it before the Supreme Court of the state of Maine, and we won. After we had started construction, we had a town meeting, and Jim Mitchell, who was on the school committee, made a motion that we pay all the expense of those who had opposed us in the legal battle, because they'd gone to a lawyer and there was quite an experience. And we got approval from the State Board of Education to use monies that came into the town from the State Board for Education, and we paid all of their legal expense. It wasn't greatly publicized, but all of those who were opposed seemed to settle down after that, after we paid several $1,000s in legal, and we had paid our own, but we hired a local architect who lived in Vassalboro at the time to draw the plans, and started construction. And it was a long process, but I think I'm right. I haven't been in the school lately, but if you visited that building today, I think you would have the impression that it's been there a very short time. It's been well cared for. They've had some accidents that created some problems, like a small fire that had a good bit of damage done in one area, but it was repaired. But in 20 years, the cost of the building had been paid for. And the state had furnished an annual sum of money that reduced the debt, and it really didn't cost the town very much, if anything, to build that beautiful building. We paid for the lot that the property is on out of funds that the school had at the time, and that was a local investment in a sense. It didn't raise taxes, it was money that was on hand. But we did pay the Rancourts immediately. And I was involved somewhat by my own interest in seeing things done, and the rest of the committee approved that I would continue. I had, actually I got defeated at an election, but it was for 1 year, because filling a vacancy for 1 year. And even after I had lost the seat, I continued to have activity with the architect because I'd been so involved in the planning. There are several details in my memory that I can tell you with interest. After we had built the building, well, let's start with the foundation. We had to blast ledge out of a long part of that area. We didn't realize that at the time, but that ledge interfered with the plans rather than draw new plans and start over again. It was decided by the contractor, let's just blast it out. And all of the rock that was blasted out, and it was a tremendous amount, was carried over to a wetland, and it now sits where the ball field is. And it made a dry area for a ball field. And didn't cost us very much. We had to have contractors with trucks that would carry the stuff away. But after the building was structured and built, we had a very large crawl space, they called it, under the building because of that ledge. Because we started the building at the top of the hill, and the ledge had caused us to go down quite a bit, 15 feet or so. And here the building sat above that area that had been cleared. And Roy Nesbitt, who was with the State Department of Education, said, well, just leave it as a dirt floor. And he and I had numerous arguments over the years. It took a long time. But finally, after one meeting, he finally said, well, Bill, you can have your cement floor and have that area. And there now sits 5 rooms on that area. It was made into 5 classrooms with plumbing and storage areas and so forth. But there were a lot of little details that took place in the 2 years it took to build that building. That's just one. But we have always felt very satisfied, and the educational program consolidated into one building with one leader working with the staff has improved the quality of education. The kids that have finished here the last 20 years have all shown their worth in further education. In fact, several of the graduates have gone on for graduate degrees and have doctorates and are involved in significant activity. We have a lot to be thankful for. But that's been my only involvement in community activity other than normal participation. But I feel gratified to have the experience. Very good. I don't know much of anything else to talk about.
What did you do for activities here with your kids?
Most of the activities that we participated were focused where Pat was working in schools in Waterville. Kids were involved in sports, and when both girls and boys were involved in athletics as well as their academics, and it was all centered in Waterville High.
Yeah.
I traveled as a traveling salesman, so I didn't get to participate too much. I was out on the road all over the state. But kids benefited. They look back on it with a lot of pride.
Favorite part about Vassalboro?
Huh?
What's your favorite part about Vassalboro?
My backyard. Favorite part of Vassalboro is our property. Right?
That's cool.
We have a pond that I dug. I bought a used bulldozer and started digging it and ended up having to have a contractor come in and help us and move heavy pieces of rock and so forth. But we call Lake Willard our pond is part of our backyard where we garden, and Pat loved to garden. She loved to flower garden, and I've raised food most of the years till lately. But the last 7 years I haven't been very active with Pat's illness and later her death. But I'll try a small garden this year again. We've had a delightful life here.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good place to be.
Did your kids hang out like with each other at your property? If you were home, would they hang out with each other, or did they have friends down the road?
Oh, the kids had friends, brought friends in. Pat and I had friends here.
Yeah.
We had activities in terms of personal relationships. And Laura, your brothers were there a lot. We had Laura's brother, both of them were in Scouts. Yeah, and my boys were in Scouts, and they all advanced to Eagle Scout level, did well, and have great memories. Both Peter and Rob talk, when they're together, that comes up, some of the fun things they did. A lot of it centered around our living, where we live, on Oak Grove Road. And the construction itself, very well done.
Yeah.
And we had the musical program was one of the stars because once we had the 3 schools together, instead of the music program running from school to school on a piecemeal, we then put together, not I, but the music instructors put together an orchestra and a band, and the children really worked together as a team to create good music. It wasn't flim-flam music, it was quality.
So it seems like it was very forward thinking on your part to have the school, it seems like you really thought ahead, not just to fix the problems with the schools we have now. What inspired you to think ahead?
Good question, and it wasn't just me, it was a committee of 5 people, superintendent with a committee. Lee Duff came in the middle of this when we started, but Lee offered good leadership. The architect listened to us and explored the possibilities that were faced. Now, the Board of Education from the state supervised everything. The man that was in charge of that was Nesbitt. His name's Leroy Nesbitt. He and I were good friends, and we conflicted very quickly on some of the ideas, but one of the ideas that Roy had was that we should build a school with small teaching rooms, which would mean that we would have to expand our faculty, which means that our local budget providing for additional faculty would be suffering. It would be a detrimental thing to the kids to confine them to small rooms. One of the other issues regarding construction was one of the schools, and I got together personally, a 3-car, each car filled with passengers, but a three-car viewing to go to various schools and see the effect of construction. And the small classroom was one of the big issues that I really stood hard for. And I was very vocal. But we went to 5 schools, and there were 10 of us that went very diligently to see how these schools are functioning. And 3 of the schools had small classrooms, and one of them had combined many classrooms just with portable partitions. But the 3 with the small classrooms all had windows way high, not at the site that children could see out. They couldn't see. The small windows were above head height. And the reason, the rationale of this was, well, the kids can't sit out and daydream. They have to pay attention to what they have in the classroom. Well, it was ridiculous. And I fought it, and Lee Duff was with me. He had to be very careful, and he was very tactful. I was not necessarily tactful. I was direct. But I fought this small classroom and high windows because I felt that that would defeat the purposes we had of teaching children. And really, I ought to take the kids out and have outdoor activities and so forth rather than confine them in small cell-type rooms. And the 3 schools that still have that are not on record of having produced outstanding students. Believe me. And I don't think at the time that it was really an issue that many people appreciated. The architect had to fight it, and he was careful, very tactful, but he agreed with me that we'd be better off to have larger classrooms, and we did. And our rooms are well portioned, and they've done a good job, and they're doing a good job. When you read the honor rolls of high schools, kids that had their grade school education in Vassalboro appear at the top of the classes as they've gone through high school. So many of them have been very successful, and that's a good mark. It also contributed to our faculty staying with us. Our faculty was really loyal to this school for so long, many of whom are now retiring and have retired, but we had continuity with leadership in one school rather than leadership in 3 schools. And I think we've all, as a community, have benefited. It's really pulled the town together more instead of being separated with various sections of the town. So I feel good about that.
Was it by design for the location, where it's not, the other schools was east, north, Riverside. This one is kind of just central, but not associated with any particular part of town.
That's why it was chosen.
Okay.
And that was a direct responsibility of the committee.
Yeah.
And one of the choices was brought to us. We had several different options of places to locate the school. One was to expand Carl B. Lord, which put everything in the north.
Yeah.
and that was easily defeated. But the other was right here in this center, over in the very low ground that is now housing, has housing on it. But the architect came with the backhoe from the town, Everett, what's his last name? He worked for the town, but he brought the tractor with a backhoe on it. And I was with them, and he dug several test sites in that low ground, and every one of them held water just under the surface of the ground. We would have had terrific problems. The town repair garage is right probably down below. Everything has to be on top surface. They can't dig down, because that whole land was almost swamp, not quite. But there was a good bit of debate in the committee about that being central town. That was the idea. Well, that's an important consideration, but we wanted to be able to have a substantial building not built on wet land. And I went to Fred Rancourt and made a deal with him. And I bought that with my own money. I had to go to the credit union the next day and say that was a cold check, we got to cover it with a loan, and we did, until the town could vote it. But we got that piece of property and I tied it up with the payment to Rancourt's, and it was timely. It worked well.
Yeah. It's a perfect spot.
It's worked well.
Yeah.
We've had problems,
Right.
but I think they had real problems with well water early on. Where we had the well dug was in a low area, and we thought the drainage from the rest, it didn't work that way. And because of all the rock and granite, they finally had to re-drill that and get it into condition where it produced the water we needed. That was a major issue. If I'm right in my memory, the Hogendorn's son was very, very bright, and I vaguely remember him in that first class. It could have been he was in the second graduating class, but he's now a professor at Wesleyan University with his doctorate. Very, very highly respected scholar. And Dr. Burke, his oldest son, was in that early class. And he's now an executive with NBC. We have other people that come to my mind that have achieved a lot. And they were here to get the foundation of learning right here in Vassalboro. Vassalboro has a good history. Vassalboro and China together have a good history of people who've made noteworthy contributions. And there were Jones boys that were very, very successful in their life. Lovely family, wonderful people. My memory is short and not very accurate. I hope I haven't misled someone into thinking something they shouldn't think of, but all I can say is we've lived here since 1969, which is 54 years, and for me, they've been wonderful. For Pat, up to the time that she got sick, we both had a lot of joy by being here. And good family life and good friends, and it's been a great place. It is a great place. I love living where I do.